In this video, we're going to discuss something that's absolutely foundational to chemistry, even at the beginning levels. And this thing has a lot of different names. Sometimes you'll hear it be called the factor label method. Other times you'll hear it called dimensional analysis. Whatever. Very fancy names, very kind of boring sounding names, but what this essentially is, in a nutshell, is in some sense unit conversion, and that could be part of it. If you want to convert, say, miles per hour to feet per second, you'd use dimensional analysis. But it's often also, as you'll see in later chapters, it's more than simply converting units. You're actually converting quantities. And the idea is that when you're converting between either units or you're converting between quantities, there are certain equivalences, certain unities, certain equalities that you use to convert from one unit of something or one amount of something or one kind of something to another. Okay, that sounds incredibly vague, I know, but hopefully I will give you some examples in this video about what I mean and actually how you do the factor label method. It sounds scary and it looks scary, but it's actually, once you kind of get the foundational principle, it's not that bad. So let's take an example of a really straightforward, quick example. Let's say you had 2 feet, the measurement, and I asked you how many inches are in 2 feet? Well, you'd say to me, well, listen, it's just 12 inches per foot, and if I got 2 feet, that's just going to be 24 inches, right? That was easy. And sure, that was easy. You can do that in your head, right? If I ask you how many feet are in 3 yards, you'd say, oh, well, there's 3 feet per yard, so I've got 3 times 3, so it's 9. Sounds easy, but what are you actually doing in these simple examples? Let's see. Well, you start out with 2 feet, and you're multiplying by something, right? You're multiplying in the original example by 12. But why are we multiplying by 12? Well, if we go over here for a second, we want to get our answer in inches. Which means if you think of the units as well as the numbers, we're talking about the units for now, which is why it's also called dimensional analysis. When you think about the units, you want to have inches on the top here, right? So whatever I multiply by, I want to multiply by inches. Now, I don't want feet anywhere in this, which means I've got to also divide by feet, in order so that the feet units will cancel out and we'll just be left with the inches unit. Well, here's an interesting thing. What is the ratio, the key unit, the key relationship between inches and feet? Well, we know it's 12 inches for every 1 foot. And there we go. This is 2 times 12 is 24 inches. So this is the fancy, complex way of doing what you can already do in your head. Same thing with yards. Let's look at this yards example. 3 yards times something is going to give us feet. Well, I want feet on top, and I want to get rid of yards so that they'll cancel, and I'm just left with feet. Well, how many feet are there in a yard? Well, it's 3 feet per 1 yard. And now there we go. We just multiply across. 3 times 3 is 9 feet. So that is the simple way of looking at something that can be relatively complex. Now, obviously, if all our problems were as easy as this, you wouldn't need the factor label method. But in this case, in most of the cases in chemistry, you're not going to be able to do it in your head, either because it's just going to be too much math, or because the conversions are not going to be as intuitive as, say, 12 inches to 1 foot, 3 feet to 1 yard. So let's look at another example. Let's say we're converting 30 feet per second, and I wanted to convert that into feet per minute. All right, well, let's see. The best thing you can do with this is just write out all of your fractions in this way. So I'm doing 30 feet per 1 second. That's where I start. That's my starting point. My ending point, let me just make sure, my ending point is going to be some sort of amount of feet per minute. So let's think about this. I need minute on the bottom. So I'm going to have to multiply by some sort of minutes on the bottom in order to get minutes. Which means I have to get rid of seconds on top, right? Because I want to get rid of seconds on the bottom. So I'm going to want to put a unit here that will cancel out the seconds here, and I'll just be left with feet over minutes. Well, do we know a conversion between minutes and seconds? Sure we do. We know there's 60 seconds per minute. And there we go. We just multiply across. This will be 1,800 feet per minute. So that's an example of sometimes we want to get rid of something on the bottom, especially if we've got this mixed unit like feet per second. Let's try something harder. Let's say we have someone's traveling at 40 miles per hour. And I want to know how many feet per second is that. Well, I'm not going to write out feet per second over here because I don't know how many steps it's going to take, but we can just work through this. So what do you want to do? You want to do miles or hours first? Let's do hours first. Let's convert hours into seconds. Well, we could know the hours and seconds conversion. I think it's 3600, but let's say we didn't. Let's say we didn't know how to get from hours to seconds. Well, we can convert to hours to minutes, right? So let's write hours here, minutes here. We know there's 60 minutes in 1 hour. And now I know how to convert from minutes into seconds. Well, I can just do 1 minute has 60 seconds. And there we go. We got our conversion. So now, if we looked at this, we can just kind of take one step back and just do this part first. In theory, you can do them all in a row, but we're just going to do it one step at a time. Hour cancels with hour, minute with minute. We're just left with seconds on the bottom. We multiply this out. This is going to be, when we multiply everything out, 40 miles per 3,600 seconds. Now, I know we could reduce that more, but stick with me because we still got to do this miles. We want to get feet on the top. So we want to multiply by feet on the top, which means we got to multiply by miles on the bottom in order to cancel out the miles. So how many feet are in a mile? Well, you look this up. It's 5,280 feet per 1 mile. Now we just multiply all the stuff across. So let's see. It's got to be 40. Let me just clear this out first. 40 times 5280. Okay. Then we're going to divide the answer by 3,600. And we're going to get 58.66666 or 58 and 2/3, whatever, or 0.67, whatever, mile or feet per second, right? Because here we have the mile unit is going to cancel, and we're left with feet per second. So you can see the key here is this. There are two keys. First is to always keep track of your units. It's not really about the numbers. It's never really about the numbers. The numbers are relatively trivial once you know where to put them. You just pop them into your calculator. But it's all about the units. So keep track of your units. Keep track of what unit has to go on top, what has to go on bottom, so that you can get to your final answer. The other thing to keep in mind is that knowing these conversions is key, right? If you don't know the conversion between minutes and hours, you're not going to do this problem. It's impossible. If you don't know this conversion, you're no good either. You're not going to be able to get the answer. So what is also important is knowing the conversions that pop up often, and knowing where to use them, so that you can see, okay, I want to get hours to seconds. All right, I gotta go from hours to minutes, and then minutes to seconds. Or I gotta go from miles to feet. All right, I'll just use the miles to feet conversion. Right? We could also do this inches per second, right? We should just add another step here. If we want to do inches per second, which is weird, but we could do it. We have feet per 1 second. Well, we could do. We want to get inches, so it would be feet on the bottom, so they cancel here, inches on the top, and 12 inches per 1 foot. And then there you go. You multiply it out, you get some answer. That is factor label method, or dimensional analysis in a nutshell. Now, this obviously gets much more complex, and we'll see a lot of other examples in the actual units of the class. This is going to factor most appropriately into when you have a chemical equation of some kind and you have to figure out how much of a certain substance you need, how much of a certain substance you get. That's pretty much when you're going to use it, and we're going to see that later in another video.